This episode is brought to you by Hasa. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to use the 2026 State of the Pool Service Report by Skimmer to talk to you about pricing. I found some of the results in this survey pretty interesting, and I think you will as well. And if you go to the description of this podcast, there'll be a link you can click to actually download and read the report yourself. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy Coaching Program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support from me. I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. I believe this is the third year that Skimmer has done this report, and they put a lot of resources into doing this report. It's pretty comprehensive, and that's why I like using it. Let's go back to the first page where you can see where they gather their data, because I think it's really important to, see where the source comes from. And the respondents were in, of course, the states that you think would respond to the survey in greater numbers. So Texas led with 20% of the respondents, then California, Florida, Arizona, and then you have smaller percentages for all the other states. So all the Sunbelt area states, of course, were the big part of this report. So a lot of the pricing falls into those categories from those states. So keep that in mind, that if you're like in New York, the pricing won't be as similar as your pricing. It's a lot higher, I should say, or Hawaii, things like that. So this is more for those areas that do year-round pool service. So let me give you some of the pricing here. And I'll just read this off to you because I found it very interesting that these are kind of the average pricing. For pool opening, $250. For routine cleaning, which is weekly pool service, $225 was the average. And I think it skews higher because of the respondents from Texas. Texas kind of is one of the leaders in the nation in pricing in some areas. So that's a good thing for that state. Pool closing is $205. And by the way, here in California, we don't do any pool opening or pool closing. So those numbers don't really mean a lot to the California guys or Florida, but parts of Texas and, of course, a big part of the United States, the East Coast and up, do a lot of closing and opening. Filter cleaning, I found this number surprising. The average filter cleaning price is $111, and we're a little bit lower here in California. We're in the 80s and 90s in a lot of areas. And then the UV heater preventive maintenance is $85. And this one here was really surprising. Salt cell cleaning, the average was $67. And again, I think a lot of us here in Southern California are priced lower than that. So we could probably raise our prices as far as maintenance of the salt cell goes. And again, I want to thank Skimmer for doing this comprehensive report. If you haven't tried the software, you can go to my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. There's a banner icon there. Click on that, and then you can try the software for free. And I definitely recommend trying it and giving it a run. It's an awesome routing software. So that was the average pricing. Your area may differ. A lot of parts of California are lower. Florida are lower than that. Maybe parts of Texas are higher than that. Of course, the East Coast is higher. So the route cleaning, the average price per month, is really area specific. You can't go here in my area to someone's backyard and say you're charging $250 a month. In most cases, that's not going to be the rate that the competitors around you charge, and so you have to kind of adjust your rate. Typically here, the rate is anywhere from $160 to $180. And I think this is interesting that most pool service, 76% of them, do monthly billing versus per stop billing, which is 19%, and then 5 do other. I'm not sure what the other is, but 76% of the pool companies do monthly billing, which is what I do and what a lot of people do here. And I think it's pretty interesting that the monthly billing is still holding a lot of ground because, to be honest with you, it's simple. And, monthly billing basically, in a nutshell, doesn't matter if you have 5 Tuesdays that month or, 5 Thursdays. You just bill the customer monthly, and then you cash in those 4 extra service days that you do for, quote, free, basically, because some months there's 5 Tuesdays, 5 Fridays, 5 Wednesdays, and technically you're doing an extra stop without charging. That's monthly billing. The per weekly billing, per stop billing, I should say, is when you're billing every week. And so if there's 5 Tuesdays, the customer gets a higher bill that month than the month before. So this may work to your advantage because you're capturing all the money, and then when you take time off, you don't bill the customer for it. I think it's much more difficult because there's a lot of randomness to it, and customers are going to get a larger bill some months and kind of question it. So I would say that it's easier to do monthly billing. It's also easier to land the service account with monthly billing, in my opinion, because your rate looks lower because you're giving him those days, quote unquote, free, but you're actually going to cash those in for vacation and time off. So the monthly billing does have a lot of advantages over weekly billing or per stop billing. And I'm not sure what the other 5% do out there as far as billing, maybe a combination of both of those. So if you're doing monthly billing, there's no reason to change your monthly billing for sure. Now, the other part of this survey regarding billing is chemical billing. This little box is pretty telling, and it doesn't surprise me that a lot of companies are billing for these chemicals. So chlorine tablets, 73% of the companies charge for them. I would hope that'd be a little higher, but some people still absorb the cost of the trichlor tablets, which can be really crippling in the summertime. Chlorine shock, and I always recommend charging for shocking in the pool or leaving a bucket of cal hypo at a stop if they have heavy chemical use. You really can't absorb dumping 4 gallons of liquid chlorine in someone's pool because there's all your profit for that month gone. So 70% charge for shock. And then this one's interesting because I typically don't charge for baking soda and soda ash when I'm adjusting the pH in the pool, but 61% do charge for it. And then, of course, muriatic acid and dry acid, 61% charge for that. And again, a lot of us in California do like a maintenance dose of muriatic acid included in the weekly service charge, monthly service charge, I should say. But it looks like a lot of people are moving away from including that. And then, of course, 77% for specialty chemicals like Polar X, phosphate remover, enzymes, charge for those. And then the other chemicals, 18%. The strategy for moving the chemical cost to the customer, in my opinion, is fairly easy to implement. What you want to do in cases where you're paying for the tablets and you want the customer to take over that particular chemical charge, 50-pound bucket of trichlor tablets, what I usually do is I'll look at the list of customers, the ones that can absorb this with no problem when you explain to them that the cost of operating your business has gotten to the point where the trichlor tablet cost is crippling to your bottom line because of the massive price increases of 160% over the last 3 years. You simply let them know that you're going to bill them for the next bucket of tablets and you're going to leave it there, and going forward, that's what's going to happen. And the ones that maybe push back on you and don't want to absorb that cost, you can go halfway with them and let them know that you're going to put a service charge of $100 towards their account for the tablets this season, and then the following year, the year and a half, when you buy the tablets again, they'll have to pay the full cost of it. So that's one way to kind of offset it if the customers you think aren't going to like having to go from you including them to them paying it straight out, like kind of cold turkey. You can kind of gradually do it with a surcharge that kind of helps you out, and it's not too crippling for you at that point for that season. So that's how you kind of want to do it. Same with if you're going to charge for, any kind of pH up, or if you want to move the acid out of your regular maintenance dose to charge the customer. That's also something you can start gradually. And this is something that you may need to do to save your bottom line because of all of the costs of the chemicals going up every season. And if you haven't adjusted your prices accordingly, you may be losing a lot of your income for these chemical costs, especially in the summertime. And I think it's to a point where you can't really rely on the winter time to recover the summer chemical costs anymore. There's a point where you can recover some of your costs, but if it's getting to the point where you're not making any money in the summer and you're waiting for the winter to recover some of the chemical costs, you don't add as much chlorine or acid to the pool, I think that's the wrong strategy, because you're banking on something that's not there, and it may not even be nearly the amount recovered as you think. So moving the chemicals out of your billing to some degree is important. And basically, the statistics show that chemicals billed separately, 30% are doing that. Chemicals included, 45%, and some chemicals included, 25% are doing that. So a lot of companies are definitely moving away from the white glove, all-inclusive pool service. I think the hybrid model is perfect for my area. So basically, the tablets and any kind of shock, specialty chemicals, anything you're adding to the pool beyond the maintenance dose of liquid chlorine and muriatic acid are charged to the customer. And it's been really effective because most customers will get the standard billing without an adjustment during the month, month over month. And others that are using a lot of chemicals, or you're adding specialty chemicals, or you're selling them a bucket of tablets that month, will pay a higher rate. And it makes your billing easier, and it makes it more transparent for the customer, because not every customer has to pay for shock. Some have saltwater systems, and a lot of the customers don't really have anything in their bill that changes month to month. And the Pool Guy Podcast Show has teamed up with UPA to bring you affordable, reliable liability insurance starting at just $64 a month. Get up to $2 million in coverage, and the members of my coaching group get an even lower rate. Protect your business and your peace of mind. Sign up with UPA today by clicking the link in the podcast description. Interesting enough, I just did a podcast on collecting money owed, and I did talk about putting a deposit down, or actually requiring a deposit from the customer when you're doing repairs and installations. It looks like 41% always charges deposit, and 16% usually, 21% sometimes, 13% rarely, and 10% never. And I believe the ones that do sometimes, rarely, and never are going to be affected by getting burned eventually by someone who doesn't pay the balance of, or pay the whole amount of the repair install. And I think that 41% that are charging a deposit shows that there's not a lot of pushback, and that's kind of what it says here in the report, that not a lot of people push back on a deposit to secure the repair job or green pool cleanup or whatever you're doing out there with the client. The deposit, I think, is really an important thing to help you offset any kind of problems, with them canceling it or not paying the balance. So I really think that it's important to charge that deposit to protect yourself. And it also helps you with your business costs, because you're using that deposit to actually purchase the equipment you're installing, like the pump and motor. And you're not just absorbing that cost either in your business, which sometimes could be very expensive and crippling if you have an account and you have an $8,000 balance due, and you don't have the income coming in to do that because you haven't collected the money from all the repairs you're doing that month. That's because it's not unusual, if you have regular service accounts and you put in a filter or pump and motor, that you wait to bill them, in their regular monthly billing. Someone's been with you for 5 years, you put a filter in. Sometimes you'll just put that cost into their bill at the end of the month, and if you installed it on the 10th, you have to wait quite a while for your money. And if you're getting deposits from customers that aren't regular customers, then definitely that's going to help offset some of that credit on the account. And the next part of the report on page 50 really goes hand in hand with your billing, because where you get your supplies or how much you pay for them is also an important factor. Most pool pros will purchase supplies at a supplier based on price, 54%, and then 28 on availability. So the price point, of course, of getting your chemicals and your equipment is the driving factor still. And it makes logical sense that we're price sensitive. Pool guys are extremely price sensitive, in my opinion, probably more price sensitive in this industry than any other industry. And we like to save money on the cost of the stuff we're buying because everything in the pool industry is pretty expensive. So where do most pool pros shop? Pool Corp, of course, still leads with 36%. That's the SCP and Superior outlets around the country. So Pool Corp, I think they've lost some of that market share. It seems lower than I've seen it previously. I should check the past reports, but 36% is not an overwhelming amount. Pool Corp used to dominate the, of course, wholesale. Heritage has definitely caught up with 28%, so they're moving up. And I probably predict next year is going to be even closer between these two. Then you have 11% other. Then you have 8% no preference, 5% Leslie's, 4% Gorman, 2% Leisure. So basically, the biggest supplier is still Pool Corp and Heritage. Both those combined are well over half of the industry. And it makes sense that pool guys are shopping there, wholesale pricing, and, quote unquote wholesale pricing, I should say. And basically, you're getting everything. And they have a wide variety of inventory. I think Pool Corp has 100,000 SKUs. So, of course, if you go there, you're going to get what you want, or you can special order something. So, having the inventory and having the availability to pick something up is really important as well. Because if you're doing a repair and you have to wait 3 or 4 days for the part, that's really not a good business model. And so, it's great to have these outlets. We can walk in and grab the part. At last, who are the preferred equipment brands for the Pool Service Pro? Pentair has 50% of the market, and I gather that the areas that I highlight are highlighted in the survey: Texas, Florida, California. Pentair is dominant in those areas. Here in California, Pentair dominates. Like 90% of the backyard equipment is tan, so Pentair has that in California. Fluidra, Jandy, Zodiac has 24%. Hayward has 23%, but I think Hayward would skew higher if a lot more East Coast people responded, because Hayward is really big on the East Coast. So this number, I think, is more of a Sunbelt, West Coast kind of thing, mid Texas, things like that. So it's not entirely accurate as far as I'm concerned, because Hayward is much bigger than the East Coast. And I think Jandy still hasn't really caught on compared to Pentair. Pentair still dominates our area. The bottom line is your pricing. If I go back to the page where the pricing chart was, I think it's important to match your competition in your area, but realize that the average price for pool service is $225. The average price for filter cleaning is $111, and then salt cell cleaning is $67. So if there's room to adjust your prices up, if you're charging $90 for filter cleaning, maybe you want to move it up to $100 or $105. If you're charging $85, definitely move it up to $95 or $100. There's room in a lot of areas to move your pricing, especially for these services where you're not doing them every month, like filter cleaning, salt cell cleaning. You can have more of a margin there by raising the prices in those areas without too much customer pushback. They won't even notice it in some cases, and you may be leaving some money on the table with those pricing, if those pricing models, if you're pricing your services too low. Again, if you want a copy of the report, there'll be a link in the description here of the podcast. You can go through it yourself and read it. I think it's really interesting, and Skimmer did a really good, thorough job with this report. And if you're looking for more podcasts, you can go to my website, swimmingpoollearning.com, click on the podcast icon on the banner, and there'll be a drop-down menu of over 1,800 podcasts for you there. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.